streaming now and shortly start the recording. So we're starting in about 15 seconds, folks, and just starting the recording now.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Council meeting dated July 5 at 3 p.m, which is being recorded and can be viewed on YouTube. To formalise the meeting, we are doing a virtual plus in session. So just to do a council roll call on those virtual. Councillor Ripper, can you hear and see us?
Deputy Mayor, I can hear and see you.
Thank you. Councillor Rossetti, can you hear and see us?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, I can hear and see you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. So with nothing further ado, council meeting information. Members of the public gallery should note that the council records and publishes council meetings via YouTube to enhance the accessibility of council meetings to the broader Wellington community. These recordings are also archived and may be published on council's website for viewing by the public or used for publicity or information purposes. At the appropriate times during the meeting, members of the gallery may address the council, at which time their image, comments or submissions will be recorded. Members of the public who are not in attendance at the council meeting but who wish to communicate with the council via the online web form should lodge their questions or comments early in the meeting to ensure that their submissions can be dealt with at the end of the meeting. Please could gallery visitors, councillors and those invited online attendees ensure that mobile phones and other electronic devices are turned off or in silent mode for the duration of the meeting. We'd like to have acknowledgement of country. Please stand. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Gunai Kunai people, and pay respects to their elders past and present. And the prayer. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon the Wellington Shire Council, its councillors, officers, staff and their families. We pray for your guidance in our decisions so that the true good of the Wellington Shire Council may result to the benefit of all residents and community groups. Amen. May proceed. Now we do have an apology from Councillor Bai, who's away at this point. Naturally, that's why we have an apology. Do we have any declarations of conflicts of interest? I believe none. Confirmation of minutes of previous council meeting, item 3.1. Do I have a mover? Councillor Wood.
Thank you. I move that council adopt the minutes and resolutions of the ordinary council meeting of the 21st of June 2022.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Marr. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wood, any further?
You want to oppose?
Oh, sorry, apologise. Anybody oppose the motion? No? Councillor Wood? Nothing further? Thank you. Therefore, the motion is carried. Business arising from previous minutes, I believe there is nil. Acceptance of late and urgent items, nil. Notices of motion, nil. Receiving of petitions or joint letters, I believe there is nil. Invited addresses, presentations or acknowledgements. Do we have any? Councillor Crossley.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge that we're in the midst of NAIDOC Week and that the theme for 2022 is Get Up, Stand Up and Show Up. Celebrations and flag-raising ceremonies were held throughout the country and including our Shire. They were held yesterday at Rumia, the RAF Base East Sales, Central Gippsland Health and in front of the Wellington Centre, organised by Angela Chitton, the Gunai Kunai woman who is our Indigenous Engagement Officer at the gallery, and there was a great turn up there, and Councillor Mackenzie officiated for the Mayor and gave a very apt speech at that opening, although it was a bit difficult to hear with the traffic that was roaring past. But and then it went on to acknowledge the Burren Tuck walk have a smoking ceremony down a much quieter part of the Port of Sale there. I'd also like to recommend that there are 3 exhibitions on the gallery that are featuring local Indigenous artists. Richard Young, who's a Gunai man, and his work is titled Gunai Vibrations. Elaine Harris is Connections to Country. She's also from Gippsland. And also the Burruntuck Gallery is a new permanent gallery dedicated space for First Nations artists from Gippsland. So that was a significant feature for the celebrations of NAIDOC, and certainly I would encourage all people to visit those exhibitions. I'd just also like to read out a couple of paragraphs that were from the SBS NAIDOC resources that spoke to me on this occasion. And it was, First Nations people have a proud history of getting up, standing up and showing up, and they continue to show up today. Australian history books could be full of First Nations people who have fought for equality and their rights, but often these stories do not appear. It is time for truth-telling and ensuring people know the true history of Australia. Not only did freedom fighters stand up and create movements and empowered people, but everyday people stood up and showed up for real change. Racism has impacted First Nations peoples' fight for recognition, rights, equality and equity since colonisation. The role of an ally is important to challenge stereotypes and dismantling institutional racism that negatively impacts on First Nations peoples and communities to this day. There needs to be a genuine commitment from everyone and support for institutional, structural, collaborative and cooperative reform. Everyone must learn about and celebrate Australia's true history and the heroes who have made real change in this nation, and ask ourselves moving forward what our role can be and how we can play that together. Thank you.
Councillor Crossley, well presented. Thank you. I have a number of presentations and addresses to make today. Some exciting with NAIDOC week, some congratulations and some sad. So please, councillors and others online, please bear with me for a few minutes. First of all, I'd like to congratulate on behalf of Wellington Shire Council, Harriet Shing, the Upper House member of Eastern Victoria, who last week became the new Minister for Equality, Regional Development and Water. Harriet is well known in Wellington and has supported the funding of a number of key objectives. We congratulate her on her deserved appointment and have written a letter of congratulations to her along with the other new ministers. On a much sadder note, we would like to also acknowledge the passing last week of Jane Garrett, also an Upper House member for Eastern Victoria, who lost her battle with cancer. Jane also worked with our council on advocacy projects over the past 10 years, and her passion, honesty and friendship will be missed by many. Our thoughts are with Jane's family at this very sad time. NAIDOC Week. NAIDOC Week is a special week to recognise our First Nation people. On Monday, July 4, it was an honour to represent Council in recognising NAIDOC Week at the smoking ceremony, to hear from our First Nation people and flag raising at the Port of Sale precinct. NAIDOC Week is a time to unite and celebrate. It's also a time to reflect on what a united Australia would look and feel like, and our responsibilities as a council to contribute and lead reconciliation and systemic change. One of Council's key objectives for our new council plan is strengthening our relationships and partnerships with our Gunai Kurnai community. Our council plan challenges us to harness the knowledge and practices of our First Nation people in the way we sustain country. Partnering with our First Nations people is vital for us to achieve our common environmental, cultural, social and economic objectives. Our vision is for First Nations people to have a voice for truth-telling, to feel culturally safe and to have improved equitable opportunities. This vision is not new for us. However, We recognise that we must work harder every day towards a more reconciled Wellington and Australia. I know that to achieve this vision, it will take courage and leadership. Coming together for NAIDOC Week and celebrating our local Indigenous communities is a great way to spark the conversations we need to have. I'd like to take this opportunity to wish our First Nation communities an enjoyable NAIDOC Week, which started on Sunday, with amazing activities and events planned around the country, recognising and celebrating more than 65,000 years of First Nation history in Australia. I'd also like to do a presentation that I received from a Louise Carnes, who is a Locksport resident, and it's around the need for an advocacy of a Locksport hub to provide medical, library, child support and kinder, plus other services. And I met Louise last Friday at a Locksport Business and Tourism Group. And what I'm going to provide today to both the community and councillors is a deep dive into the Australian Bureau of Statistics, which notes that there are now 1,021 permanent residents in Locksport, reflecting approximately 25% growth in population since 2016. This makes Locksport one of the fastest growing towns in Australia. Consistently, the majority of the population is over 65 at 46.4%, compared to the rest of Victoria with 16.8%. 1.6% of the community of Aboriginal descent, compared to Victoria with 1.01%, both of which is below the average Australian of 3.19%. Statistics show that Locksport is not attracting younger people to the town, and this has a direct correlation to the lack of local employment, services and educational opportunities. As an example, to attend kindergarten, their young parents travel approximately 65 kilometres for the 2 or 3 hour kindergarten session. It is known that parents will choose to wait in their cars rather than spend the money on fuel 4 times per day. Locksport's median weekly income is $674. In Victoria, the income is 2.6 times more than this at $1,759. It's known that the low income has a direct correlation to poor health outcomes and access to services. It is reflected in the census. The town's long-term health conditions are staggeringly high in all domains than Victoria and Australia. Examples are 6.4% of Locksport residents have cancer, including remission, compared to Victoria of 2.8%. 10.2% have heart disease, compared to 3.7%, and 15.9% have mental health conditions, compared to 8.8% in Victoria and Australia. The census continues to show that Locksport is a caring community. They have higher rates for people who are providing care duties for a person with disability or who is ageing at 15.8% compared to Victoria at 12.9%, and more likely to do volunteer work for local organisations at 19.2% compared to 13.3%. Locksport also have a higher rate of people who have served the Australian Defence Forces at 6% compared to 1.8% in Victoria. People living in outer regional, remote or very remote areas were more likely to visit a hospital ED than those living in major cities, 17.3 compared to 4.2. And due to the tyranny of distance and associated costs, Locksportians delay seeking health support and care supports. As a council, I ask my fellow councillors to support the request that our CEO write to the CEO of CGH, requesting his support to apply for a grant to provide a medical facility for Locksport, to close on the 22nd of July, so that we don't have much time. Our community is reaching out for help, and I really hope that we please help them as well. Thank you for your time. So, moving on to point 9, notice, questions on notice. We have nil. Delegates Report. Councillor Maher.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. A week and a half ago, I attended the last resource recovery Gippsland board meeting. And as of the 1st of July, the waste and resource recovery groups across Victoria were collapsed. The boards and the groups were collapsed, making way for the new authority, Recycling Victoria. The new entity was created with the Circular Economy, Waste Reduction and Recycling Act of 2021, which was gazetted in December of the same year and now sits within DELP. Sitting on the Board of Resource Recovery Gippsland since 2017 has been a great learning experience, particularly that of governance and management of risk with the development of the Gippsland Waste Resource Recovery Implementation Plan and understanding the waste issues in Gippsland. An important part of this understanding was gained from being part of the Gippsland Waste and Resource Recovery Forum, to which Councillor Tatterson was recently Deputy Chair. This forum was instrumental in bringing together officers from all 6 municipalities of Gippsland, with nominated councillors from all 6 councils, as well as the Executive Officer of RRG, Resource Recovery Gippsland, Matthew Peake, Board Chair Richard Ellis and other board members. It is believed that the forum provided great insight to current issues experienced in Gippsland with respect to waste and its recovery, as well as providing greater understanding to the board. It also helped inform state government about opportunities or impacts to local government in their delivery of waste. The loss of this local forum is of concern, as is the loss of a local entity that has grown to understand the needs, the demands and the opportunities of waste in Gippsland. Some highlights and achievements of Resource Recovery Gippsland include the collaboration in 2019 of Gippsland, Loddon Mallee, Goulburn Valley and North East Waste and Resource Recovery groups to successfully obtain funding from Sustainability Victoria to develop a regional litter and dumping plan for each group. This resulted in a partnership between local councils, state government agencies and departments and community groups to identify the top 5 litter dumping priorities for their regions. Resource Smart Schools provided a decade of successful education in the Gippsland region, which involved the delivery of a program that ensured environmental, social and economic outcomes for students and the broader community. This was a free program to schools and helped them save further expenses in understanding energy, waste and water minimisation. This was a good program with a great team that also included Wellington Shire Council's Raquel Harris, who could answer any tricky question on waste, particularly what rubbish goes in which bin, and that is never a straightforward question and answer. Gippsland Curbside Collaborative Procurement Project aimed to bring a level of standardisation to Gippsland services and systems for waste and resource management, including the provision of economic leverage through aggregation of material. This has been a successful partnership between all 6 Gippsland councils and responds to the Victorian Government Circular Economy Policy, Recycling Victoria and New Economy. Furthermore, Gippswide Curbside supports council's transition to a low-carbon circular economy as well. Final recommendations will be made early this financial year, and the procurement project is now currently being managed by Recycling Victoria. The evidence needed to embark on this journey commenced with a transport assessment in 2017, which was funded by Local Government Victoria and auspiced through La Trobe City. This provided the necessary evidence required to embark on the Gippswide Curbside initiative, and not to mention the responses required with emergency events, natural disasters, the pandemic and market failures that we have seen over the last number of years, particularly with the national sword recycling crisis, the tyre processing disruptions, e-waste disruptions, bushfires, storms and flooding across Gippsland. The gathering of on-ground intelligence is critical, and RRG was able to do that. This is only a glimpse of the work undertaken by RRG, and I'd like to acknowledge the efforts of Matthew Peake and his team, also the board, Chair Richard Ellis and Directors Councillor Trish Jones, Chris Badger, Glenn Campbell, Siska Hester and Karen Schrank, and also the local government colleagues who have all worked tirelessly in the waste space particularly in light of the large changes we are currently seeing. I'd like to particularly thank our Wellington Shire officers, Tim Rowe, Sam Knock and Joe Rule, who have all attended the forums and worked closely with RRG and who continue the important work on waste in an ever-changing environment that includes climate change, renewables and carbon impacts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maher. Excellent Delegates Report. Thank you. 11.1, Assembly of Councillors. Do I have someone to move? Councillor Wood.
Thank you. Excuse me. I move that Council notes and receives the attached Assembly of Councillors records for the period 13th of June 2022 to the 26th of June 2022.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Stevens. Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Is that motion opposed? If not carried, Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. There's no longer a requirement to keep a written record of assemblies of councillors. However, Council, under the new Local Government Act 2020, this requirement is no longer provided, but under the Council's Good Governance Framework, Council will continue to provide records of assemblies of councillors to ensure the community are kept informed of councillors' activity and participation.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. 11.2, Schedule of Rates for Agency Staff Tender Award. Do I have someone to move? Councillor Tatterson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I move that Council adopt the recommendations contained within the attached confidential tender evaluation report of the Council meeting agenda for Contract 2022-080 Schedule of Rates for Agency Staff. And 2, the information contained in the confidential attachment Contract 2022-080 Schedule of Rates for Agency Staff and designated confidential under Section 3.1 Confidential Information of the Local Government Act 2020 by the General Manager Corporate Services on the 16th of June 2022 because it relates to the following grounds. G2, private commercial information being information provided by a business, commercial or financial undertaking that, if released, would unreasonably expose the business, commercial or financial undertaking to disadvantage. B, designated confidential information under Section 3.1 Confidential Information of the Local Government Act 2020, except that once this recommendation has been adopted, the name of the successful tenderer can be made public.
Thank you, Councillor Tatterson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Crosley. Thank you. Is that motion opposed? If not carried, Councillor Tatterson.
Thank you. From time to time, Council utilise agency staff to backfill where during the recruitment phases or to meet temporary needs. So it's important that we've got access to these agencies that provide staffing. So this was an opportunity to go out to the market and find suitably qualified organisations to provide that resource to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Tatterson. It gives me pleasure to announce the successful tenderers as Work Hire Australia, GBS Recruitment, DFP Recruitment, Planned Resources and Hayes Specialist Recruitment. 12.1, Quarterly Building Report, January to March 2022. Do I have someone to move?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Maher.
Thank you. I move that Council note the report of the building permits issued from the 1st of January 2022 to the 31st of March 2022.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wood. Is that motion opposed? If not carried, Councillor Maher.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. 299 permits were issued during the period of the 1st of January to the 31st of March, with an estimated value of just under $33 million. Land sales are currently continuing to be a highlight and show high levels of residential development. It was nice to actually see some of our regional and rural areas higher up with increased permits. Alberton had 5 permits, Bryag 7, Locksport 11. We also had Paradise Beach with 7 and Port Albert with 7, which is great to see, and Yarram with 11. So we're certainly seeing an influx of permits and planning and development throughout the Wellington Shire. And I'd just like to note that I was speaking to Josh, the strategic planner, who commented that their load is certainly significant compared to last year, and that is quite evident. And I'd just like to pass on a well done to the team, because we certainly know that they're under significant pressure with regard to this work, and everyone knows that planning is the thing that everyone talks about within the community, and I think our team is getting it right. So well done.
Thank you, Councillor Marr. 13.1, Seaspray proposed pump track. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Crosley.
Sorry, Mayor, just before we do, I apologise, Councillor Crosley, I apologise, Deputy Mayor. Normally we'd seek some comments, and we do have a comment in relation to the pump track, so I'm just sorry to interrupt. Not unusual in this day and age, councillors. We were to have Pauline Hitchens. Pauline is had indicated she wanted to come and address council. Pauline is the Secretary of the Seaspray Reserves Committee of Management, and Pauline was going to speak in favour of the pump track, which mightn't be of any surprise given it was the Reserve Committee who were the genesis, if you like, of the project. But unfortunately, Pauline has today tested positive for COVID, so she's unable to join us. She has sent me a 2-page sort of statement in support, which I'm happy to read out. I'm happy to distribute. Deputy Mayor, I'm in your hands, or I can email to councillors, but it was a statement that she was going to read out prior to this being finalised.
Councillor Crosley, do you mind if I have the CEO read it out, please? Mr. CEO, please do.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, councillors. My name is Pauline Hitchens. I'm the Secretary of the Seaspray Reserves Committee of Management, and I want to speak in support of the proposed pump track at Seaspray. I've been holidaying at Seaspray since the 1960s, and my family for many years before that. In those days, the township was quite different and seemed to provide for more activities for youngsters. As children, we could roam freely around the crowded foreshore caravan park. We ran along the top of the sand dunes and explored the Back Creek jungle. There were fancy dress evenings and dances in the old hall. The showgrounds, the site of today's caravan park, also hosted events and fetes. There were several shops as well as small but popular surf club venue. Today things have changed in many ways, some positive and some not. There are restrictions on access to the sand dunes for environmental reasons, which were not appreciated in those days. And children generally have far greater restrictions for their own safety. The caravan park is more modern and open, and there have been more formal tracks introduced around the creek. There are also fewer activities and amenities, and services seem to have fallen behind. There's only one general store and a coffee shop, and the surf club has yet to establish a workable business model for a holiday town to take advantage of the great asset it and the community has developed. We've all had to overcome COVID restrictions and extreme weather conditions in the past year or so, although the travel restrictions that kept many in Victoria have been to our advantage, and many newcomers have discovered the town. Seaspray has many attractions with a safe, well-patrolled beach, coupled with a great option for youngsters in Merriman's Creek. However, it seems to have fallen behind in amenities in recent years. The Reserves Committee of Management has funded a walking path along the foreshore from the caravan park to the creek and several beach crossovers. It has upgraded its toilet block and added a playground with community input. In recent years, there has been frequent requests for a skate park or similar facilities. With the popularity of existing pump tracks, we saw an opportunity to further enhance our town and keep up with what was on offer in other localities, and offer to support such a development, guided by the strategic and practical criteria that Council has set for safety and operational reasons. We believe the pump track will enhance and enrich the family-friendly appeal of the town and provide a range of new experiences for our children and grandchildren. They have proven popular with youngsters of all ages. Council is well aware of the advantages and appeal of the pump tracks it has installed across the Shire. They sit comfortably in the landscape, and the gentle slopes of the specialist design means pump tracks cater for all levels of experience. The young can start at the recommended beginner space and advance as technical skills develop. Nearly there, councillors. It's a healthy activity which provides an alternative to being cooped up inside with devices and electronic games. Local youngsters have been very active in supporting this development. The enhanced offerings of the upgraded general store, improvements underway to the existing playground, and the creation of an activity hub in this area, we believe provide the foundations to attract further investment in the town. This will set a standard which will help return the town to its deserved role as a leading tourist attraction in the Shire. We trust that Council will support this vision with endorsement of the planned pump track. Thank you, Pauline Hitchens.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Councillor Crossley, thank you for your patience.
Always defer to the Mayor, to the Chair. Thank you. I move that that Council 1 notes the 66% of the survey responses from ratepayers in Seaspray and 83% of the survey responses from ratepayers in the Honeysuckles support the proposed Seaspray pump track as described in the community engagement process. 2, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to progress the development of a pump track on the Seaspray Foreshore Reserve as described in the community engagement process. 3, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to inform the ratepayers of Seaspray and the Honeysuckles of Council's decision in relation to this matter. And 4, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to inform the head petitioner advising them of Council's decision in relation to the matter.
Thank you, Councillor Crossley. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Stevens. Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Is that motion opposed? If not, carried. Councillor Crossley.
Thank you. As Pauline quite eloquently stated through her letter and read by the CEO, this was a project that was instigated by the community, and I do recall doing the community engagement when we could do such things before COVID, and visiting the Seaspray Hall and having that proposal and various sites suggested by the community at that time. So this is, as I say, has come from the community, and not only that, it's actually supported by the community financially, in that the Foreshore Committee is putting forward $50,000 to actually support that, which also is the remainder of $150,000 of the project is funded by the federal government, local roads and community infrastructure program. So they're really putting their money where their mouth is in supporting this project. And also, as I support what Pauline said, there's been really huge acceptance of the various pump tracks that have been around in Hayfield, Stratford, Sale, Maffra, I think there's one down in Yarram. So it's, and Locksport area, all of those infrastructures that really engage the younger people in using our foreshore when it's not suitable to go in swimming. So I think there was extensive community engagement. There were letters sent out to all the ratepayers. There were petitions both for and against. There was also a huge engagement in the Wellington Your Say platform, and which has been brought out by the statistics that we're going with the community that are in favour of it. And I think, as it said, it'll be a great asset. And also, Seaspray may look like a sleepy town in the winter. I go down there regularly with the dog. The dog enjoys it down there, but I avoid it in the summer because it's packed with people, kids, dogs, pushers, bikes, scooters. So I think having this facility down there will be well utilised. And as we are looking at that as a holiday destination, it's not just for the residents that are there at the time, that are living there all year round. It's also catering for the visitors that, as we said, they expect these sort of facilities, and certainly I think it'll be well used into the future. So congratulate the team on what was a fairly arduous process, and an engagement team for making sure that everybody knew what was going on there. A big task. Congratulations, and we do hope to see a great outcome, a great facility in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crosley, and certainly thank you to all the councillors for supporting this community-led program. It's going to be a great outcome for the community. Now, further gallery and online comments. I believe we have one, which I'll now hand over to the CEO.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillors, on the 26th we received a question from Mr Jim King. Mr King's question is in relation to property valuations, which have sort of increased across Victoria, and the impact that they will have on ratepayers, the increase in property valuations and therefore increase in Shire revenue. Mr King's question is around whether council laws, executives, general staff, employers receive any sort of benefit, exemptions, discounts from those increase in valuations. So there's quite a legislative process in relation to that. Councillors will draft up an appropriate response, Deputy Mayor, to Mr King to respond to those questions, and we'll provide a copy to all councillors, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr CEO. In closed sessions, do we need to go to in closed sessions? I believe not. So, if nothing further, meeting is closed at 3:36. Thank you for all for coming.